Reason Studios has just released the Mimic Creative Sampler. So let's play a game. Without thinking about it, I want you to guess how many samplers Reason now has. 10. Reason has 10 samplers. We've got the new Mimic Creative Sampler, Dr. Octorex, Kong, Oomph Club Drums, Oomph Retro Beats, Rhythmic, Red Drum, Brain, NNXT, and the NN19 sampler. All of these are made by Reason Studios, and they're all samplers. Now, I've been a Reason fanboy for a long time. I used Reason exclusively for over 8 years, since Reason 5. It was hesitantly that I left Reason to start using Ableton as my main DAW. The reason that I did that was because Reason wasn't keeping up in terms of sampling ability. I wanted to be doing a lot more audio manipulation and sampling and chopping and that kind of thing, and I couldn't do it in Reason. So I switched to Ableton, and it's fantastic. I also use Native Instruments Machine quite a lot to sample and chop audio as well, and that's fantastic. I'm not going to talk about how the new Mimic sampler compares to third-party stuff in this video, although I do have a lot of opinions about that. So if you want to hear how I think the Mimic Creative Sampler stacks up to what is stock in Ableton and Native Instruments Machine, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that video. In this video, I'm going to look at how the Mimic Creative Sampler fits into the other 9 samplers that are already in Reason. I downloaded Mimic the other day and had a quick look at it. My initial reaction was disappointment. I'm aware that Reason 12 is not officially released, and as I've mentioned before, I'm withholding my final opinion until we see everything that comes in Reason 12. However, after the Reason 11 release and years prior to that, I was skeptical that Mimic would actually deliver anything meaningful. Is it a good sampler? Yeah, I think it's actually pretty cool. But I think it's also important to take into account how it relates to the other rack extensions in Reason and what it adds to Reason as a package in terms of functionality. First of all, let me show you a beat that I made with Mimic, and we'll talk about some of the features, some of the ways that I think are actually really dope to use it. And then I'll explain the concerns that I have with Mimic Creative Sampler. So it doesn't actually look like there's a whole lot going on here in my session. That's because all of my drums and all of my bass are actually being triggered by players inside Reason, and I'm using automation to change them up. So let's look at the drums for the starters. What I've got here is a beat map triggering the Mimic Creative Sampler in multi-slot mode. That basically just means that we can slot in 8 different drum sounds and control them using the parameters on the sampler. Is this any different to Kong, either of the Oomph drums, Red Drum? No, not really. There's nothing new here other than a slightly different interface. But this is what we've got. Basic drum beat. Let's talk about the bass. This is one of my favorite ways to kind of use samplers, and I think it's pretty cool what we've got going on here. What I did was dragged in a vocal sample.
Never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna let you go.
Then with Mimic in slice mode, I pitched it down to -20, put mono re-trigger on so that it's only gonna play one note at a time, and increased the release on the amp envelope so that even when I just tap a note, it plays the whole slice. If I decrease the release, it doesn't play the whole slice. I also added a little bit of the noise resonator, turned some compression up, and adjusted the formant a little bit. Also put fixed pitch on. This is a feature I think is actually really dope because it allows you to take a vocal and have it all at one pitch. This is possibly one of the most useful things I think you can do with Mimic in terms of what I like to do with samplers. Then I'm just running it through a pulverizer, a little bit of echo. But the cool thing happens up here because what I've done is taken a drum sequencer. I've had to use 2 of them though because there are 13 slices on my sample and there's only 8 slices in the drum sequencer. So what I have done is programmed each row on the drum sequencer to be a slice. Then I've just kind of written in some different slices. Now, one thing that I do find mildly frustrating is I can't change these patterns at the same time. That's really annoying. I think one thing that Reason is not very good at is it doesn't give you many options to have slots like that. Like we've got 8 slots, which is fine if you need less than 8 slots. But if you have to start stacking instruments, you've just got to start clicking a whole bunch. There's no way to sync them up. I think it'd be really cool if there was an option for us to pair drum sequences together like this, but then have global controls. Like, why can't we join these together? That'd be really dope. If they add something like that in the new Combinator update, I think that would be really fantastic. Anyway, let's have a listen to this. So that's kind of my first pattern, my second pattern, and my third pattern. I think that one sounds particularly like a didgeridoo. I actually dig that. Then what I've got is automation controlling the changing of the patterns and the pitch. Now, I know I did just talk about how I wanted the drum sequences to be in sync, and I ultimately think that would be the best scenario. But if they're not in sync, one cool thing you can do is actually automate the patterns separately so you get variation in the layer changes. But I don't think that is ultimately necessary, because if they were in sync, you could still use all of these repeats and probability and the cool stuff that you can do with the drum sequencer player to get variation. I think that's probably one of my favorite ways to utilize kind of slicing in a sample like that. The next thing I did was create this sound, which actually comes from this sample.
Welcome, valued customer.
Which was another one that I got off Splice, I think, or I don't know, I got it somewhere. So what we're doing in this case is we've got it in pitch mode. Stretch mode is on advanced, so it maintains the timing of the sample. I've shortened it here. Kind of a bit of a bit rate effect. Quite a lot of low cut just to clean it up. I think it's about it. We've got it running through the pulverizer, bit of delay, bit of reverb. Synchronous is just providing a sidechain. So this is what we got with this. Which is kind of filthy, disgusting, like a little bit rough. That's supposed to be the vibe. That's kind of really the whole beat. It's just kind of 3 elements: the bass part, that whatever that is, and the drums, and so we get this beat. Yeah, so this is obviously super messy and super rough and unmixed and stuff, but I actually kind of like the ideas there. The drums are just generic, but I like what I was doing with the bass and this other weird sound. It's something I think I want to expand later. So I think there is a bunch of cool stuff that you can do with Mimic. However, I do have some concerns and I do have some issues that I want to mention. So let's talk about those. As I mentioned earlier, one of my biggest reasons for switching to Ableton as my primary DAW was Reason's lack of options when it came to sampling. I don't ultimately feel like Mimic really fixes this issue. I'm going to make another video comparing Mimic directly with Ableton Sampler and Native Instruments Sampler. But in this video, we're just going to talk about how I think Mimic could have been more effectively optimized given the other things that exist in Reason without even talking about third-party stuff. As far as I am concerned, I feel like the only thing that Mimic actually adds to Reason as a complete package is the ability to do stuff in slice mode. Literally every other feature, I think, exists somewhere in one of the other samplers. So pitch, you could already do pretty much everything that exists in this pitch setting in terms of stretching and stuff in either grain or in an XT. Multi-slot. This is effectively just a drum machine. In this multi-slot mode, you've got 8 slots. The different settings you've got here, in Kong, you've got 16 slots. You've got 10 slots in Red Drum. Multi-slot mode, nothing new. Multi-pitch mode, being able to layer different things on top of each other on different keys and do stuff how you want. That's cool. But again, you could also kind of do that in Kong with the pad settings stuff over here. And you could definitely do that in an XT if you wanted to. I'm obviously aware that the settings and stuff on the front are slightly different to some of these other ones, but in my mind, it's the principle that's still the same. The only kind of new thing we've got is the slice mode. So let's talk about that slice mode. We've got the sensitivity control. However, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't give you the option to split things by time. So you can't break the slices up into quarter notes or eighth notes. It's only based on transients with the sensitivity knob here. The other thing that it doesn't do is match the sample to the tempo of your song, which limits your ability to slice things rhythmically. And possibly one of my biggest disappointments about this is, as far as I am aware, there doesn't seem to be any way to export your slice mode loops as Rex files, which is really sad because Dr. Octarex is actually a pretty dope way to play back samples. You've got all of these different things you can do to mash stuff up, which would seem to be in line with the idea of slicing things anyway. And if we look at Recycle is such an old application. Like, look at this. This does not look like a modern piece of software. And I don't really ever use Recycle because it's just too much of a mission to actually do anything with it, really. I wonder if Reason as a DAW is going the way of Recycle. Like, yeah, it's there. It's supported. Can you even buy it anymore? How do you even buy things on the Reason site anymore? Shop. Reason 11, own category, Recycle. Yeah, you can still buy Recycle for $99. It doesn't really seem like there's much to do with Recycle. I wonder if that's where Reason as a DAW is going. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's supported, but like, kind of not really. Like, how many of you guys watching this knew that Recycle is actually there and in the shop and that you can use it to make Rex loops? So I was really disappointed that Mimic does not appear to have a way to create Rex loops. Because again, what's the point of Dr. Octarex if you can't easily create Rex loops? Why isn't there an export to Dr. Octarex button or something? That would be really dope. The other thing that I wish it had is a way to visualize these slices or whatever on a drum pad, like Machine, because I prefer doing kind of sample chopping and stuff on a drum pad, not on a keyboard. I am hoping that the new Combinator is going to have some kind of like drum pad mode or whatever that you can use to work with things like this, because currently Kong is the only thing that we have in terms of a drum pad. Ironically, Kong looks like an MPC, and MPCs are what we kind of use for sampling. I would have liked to have seen some integration between Kong and Mimic. There's this NN Nano, this nano sampler in Kong here, which is clearly based on the NNXT. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was an option to put the Mimic sampler in Kong like this? Like, it says drum module. Why are not all of the drum machines available as modules inside Kong? That would be an incredibly powerful tool. Instead, we get this like little mini light version of NNXT. We can't use Mimic with its powerful slice mode functionality as a module inside Kong. Just think about how awesome it would be if you could take this entire front panel of Mimic and its ability to do slices, put it in Kong here, have these additional effects modules and stuff, and then use the pads from Kong. You've got 16 of them for a start. You've got all these pad assignment things. You could use it with any kind of pad controller. That would be super powerful in my opinion. And it would really kind of breathe new life into Kong. The frustration I've had with Kong for so long is that it's pretty limited in its ability to work with other stuff. That's one thing I was really hoping for with Mimic, was some kind of like NPC style functionality. But thinking about it now, I think that drum module, why don't we have all of the other drum machines available inside Kong? Which brings me to another frustration I have with the fact that we have 10 different samplers in Reason. They're all kind of just like limited. None of them are comprehensive. They've all got little selections of things. The reason I don't really use these is because Ableton and Native Instruments both have singular instruments that do literally everything that can be done in Reason, but in a singular instrument. So why would I go and pick a limited module in Reason when I can do everything that can be done in here or any of the other ones in one of the other things? Like if we compare these two oomph ones for starters, we're limited to only having 8 drum sounds. That's really limited. I actually think the functionality of what we can do with these is really cool. You've got certain effects and stuff that are suited for club drums. That's why it's there, oomph club drums. You've got these different panels over here, and oomph retro beats. You've got these effects and panels that are suited for that style. I actually think that's an incredibly awesome idea. But only having 8 slices is stupidly limiting. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were able to open either of these oomph modules in Kong? You'd get all of the benefit of Kong with all of the uniqueness of oomph. Because it's not that I don't like the fact that oomph is limited in terms of its options. I think that can actually be really, really good if you're trying to dial something in stylistically. You don't have option paralysis, but I don't think it allows you the flexibility. I feel like Reason kind of goes halfway there and is like, yeah, it's good enough, but it doesn't go far enough. And so while in theory I like the idea, it just doesn't actually execute on that idea. Rhythmic, I don't really have anything good to say about. I'm not sure what the point of this is. It doesn't do anything, really. But again, if Rhythmic was a module inside Kong, it would be like a really nice, simple sampler, because Rhythmic is a really kind of simple sampler. Red Drum is dope. I like the fact that there's a step sequencer. Again, I think Red Drum could be a module inside Kong. There's no reason why you can't step sequence these hits. This is the thing, right? Machine has the drum pads, Machine has a step sequencer, and it all happens inside of it. I legit think Reason has all of the different components inside the rack to create Machine, basically, and have their own version of Machine inside Kong. I think Kong could become like Reason's version of Machine, and that would be awesome. That would be incredibly powerful. NNXT and NN19 are more designed for playing back sampled instruments as opposed to kind of that choppy style of sampling that you can now do in Mimic with slice mode. But one thing that NNXT does that I think is really, really great is you can right click and you can go set root notes from pitch detection. That is so helpful. If you're dragging in a sample and you don't know what pitch it is, you just have to hit that option and all of a sudden your keyboard maps correctly to the pitch that you're using. As far as I'm aware, Mimic doesn't have that. I can click on it. There's no option to do that. You have to manually figure out what pitch your sample is in and then select the root note over here by dragging it to it. So I'm not sure if Reason Studios have any plans to integrate things like this in the future. I really, really hope so, because I think there are so many awesome elements with so many different rack extensions in Reason. However, they're all kind of scattered and bitsy. I find myself not reaching for these as much anymore because I've got better and more integrated options. I hope they improve on Mimic before Reason 12 is officially released. I hope that there's a whole lot of additional stuff in Reason 12 with the Combinator and things that we may not even have heard about. Like, I would be over the moon if they added basically every rack extension as a module into Kong. I think that would be ridiculous. I think that would be just the best thing ever. But I'm really, really struggling to stay optimistic and see this as any likelihood of happening. As I've said a few times, I'm staying open-minded. I am waiting to see what is released in totality in Reason 12, because we're only getting bits of it so far. But Reason's historical performance over the last number of years has not given me a ton of confidence. I'm starting to feel like they've got all these good ideas, like high-res graphics, great idea. Better browser, great idea. Mimic Creative Sampler, a great idea, but they're all just these kind of bitsy ideas and they don't feel very integrated. And I wonder if that's because Reason is designed to be used as a rack. The fact that it's a rack is awesome, and I do like being able to rewire stuff, but I'm not in rack mode when I'm deciding to use a drum machine or a sampler necessarily. I just want the results that the drum machine or sampler is supposed to provide. And more these days, I'm finding that if I use a Reason device, I hit limitations pretty quickly, whether that's the fact that I only have 8 possible slots available, or that it's missing this kind of certain feature that isn't another Reason device, but I don't want to use that device. I want to use this device. And so if I'm not intentionally sitting down to rewire stuff in the rack, I'm not concerned about the fact that these different devices have different functionality. I want to be able to use one thing that's going to give me the result. And I think this feeling about things just being kind of half done or like good ideas extends through to simple things like if you zoom, now literally everything is zoomed. I have no reason to have a zoomed browser. That just seems dumb. This doesn't feel like a really good way to move around. I'm hoping that gets fixed. I'm hoping that gets fixed by Reason 12. We'll wait and see what happens there. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm starting to wonder if Reason Studios even have a plan. They've got so many awesome components that if they were optimized to work together more effectively, would be insane. I really don't like to complain about this stuff, but I'm getting more and more frustrated by Reason. And I asked myself, why do I care? And I realized it's because I was a Reason fanboy for like over 8 years. I loved Reason. I got into it because it was all I needed. This was before VSTs were available in Reason, and I thought it was the best thing. I learned how to use the software inside and out. I was really fast with it, and I used it for 8 years. And it was only after I started hitting walls in terms of functionality with the music that I wanted to make that I started exploring other options. Ableton ended up being the DAW that I chose. And so I feel like a loyalty to Reason Studios because I was such a fan of it for 8 years. I love the product. I want to see them create awesome stuff because I love a lot of the instruments they make. But I've started to wonder if it's that loyalty that keeps me sticking around with Reason and staying interested in Reason because I was so invested for 8 years. And if I stop and I ask myself, if I was completely brand new to Reason, would I use it? I don't know if I would. I really hope Reason 12 has a lot more to deliver than what we know is coming. And I really hope they improve the elements that we already know are coming. And I hope they surprise us with a few more things. But I'm finding it harder and harder to want to use Reason. I still like it conceptually, but I'm finding it harder and harder to want to use Reason when I've got alternatives. But that's the video, guys. These were my first impressions of the Mimic Creative Sampler. I'm a little disappointed. As I've said a few times, Reason 12 is not out yet officially, so let's wait and see what happens. I am withholding my final opinion until we see everything that is on offer. But this is where I'm at with Reason right now. I'm going to make another video comparing the Mimic Creative Sampler with the Ableton and the Native Instrument ones that I use all the time, and demonstrate where I think it is lacking compared to some of its competition. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And let me know in the comments, what do you think of Mimic? What do you think of the direction Reason's taking? And do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to know. Let's talk about it, and we'll see what happens when Reason 12 comes out. Catch you guys next time.